If you dig the twisted, admire the outlandish, and are enamored by the unusual, you're in the right place. True crime, the supernatural, the unexplained, now you're speaking our language. If you agree, join us as we dive into the darker side. Because it's more fun over here. Welcome to Total Conundrum.
Warning, some listeners may find the following content disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, folks, to another thrilling episode of Total Conundrum. I'm Jeremy, and today I've got a story that's going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about small town life. Get ready to be captivated by the tale of Casey Ramirez, the Princeton Santa Claus.
Well, Jeremy, you've certainly piqued my interest. Princeton, Minnesota, our very own, has a personal Santa Claus? That's not what you'd expect.
You're absolutely right, Tracy, and that's what makes this story so intriguing. Casey Ramirez was your typical small-town guy, but behind the facade was a man with a secret that would boggle the minds of everyone in Princeton.
Okay, I'm hooked already. So what makes Casey's story so mysterious?
Well, Casey wasn't just a small-town business owner. He was deeply involved in extracurricular activities. But here's the kicker. He wasn't your typical flashy rich man. Casey's operation was discreet, and he managed to stay under the radar for years.
A low-key man of mystery in a quiet town. It sounds like something out of a movie.
Exactly, Tracy. But the best part is how the authorities finally caught up with him. You won't believe the twists and turns in this story.
Jeremy, you can't leave me hanging like this. What was Casey's secret?
The big reveal. The day the authorities uncovered Casey's secret, the whole town was in shock. And what they found hidden away was nothing short of astounding.
I need to know more, Jeremy. The suspense is killing me.
Well, you have to stay tuned for the rest of the story, Tracy. The Princeton Santa Claus, Casey Ramirez, is one tale you won't want to miss.
Fine, since you're going to leave me hanging. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this episode.
That's right, Tracy. Also, a rating and review would mean the world to us. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, plus drop us a line if you got any spooky stories or chilling mysteries you want us to dive into. We'd love to hear from you.
In the last few episodes, we discussed collaborating with a few different podcasts and how we'll be sharing their amazing trailers with all of you in future episodes, so make sure you continue to show them some love as well.
Before we shock you with their episode of Princeton Santa Claus, we'll be playing a trailer that was shared with us, The Conversation Cabin. Thank you, Farah, for collaborating with us. Everyone, go check out her podcast and show them the love and support that you show us. We have listened to her podcast, and the stories she tells are amazing. And she even has a haunted cave on her property that she investigates and discusses.
That's awesome. Before we dive into today's episode, enjoy listening to the trailer from our friend Farah at the Conversation Cabin.
Are you tired of the same old boring podcast? Need some excitement in your life? Do we have a treat for you? Introducing the Conversation Cabin podcast. Get ready to have your mind blown because we cover it all. From the paranormal to cryptids, UFOs, and aliens, we've got more strange stories than you can shake a ghostly ectoplasm-covered stick at. Think haunted places are just for the faint of heart? Think again. We'll take you on a spine-tingling journey through the most haunted locations known to humanity. You'll laugh. You'll scream. You'll probably wet your pants a little, but don't worry. It's all part of the experience. But wait, there's more. We're not stopping at the supernatural, folks. We're diving headfirst into the macabre. True crime stories that'll make your jaw drop. Murders, mysteries, and missing persons that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Can you handle it? Can you handle the goosebumps and the sheer awesomeness of the Conversation Cabin podcast? We dare you to find out. Join us every week for a roller coaster ride of terror. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's not just a podcast, my friends. Oh no, it's an experience you'll never forget. So grab your popcorn, turn down the lights, and prepare for a journey into the strange, the scary, and the unexplained. The Conversation Cabin podcast is here to rock your world.
It's not just a podcast, it's an experience.
All right, Jeremy, what do you have in store for us?
All right, today we are going to be talking about the Princeton Santa Claus. And for our viewers, Princeton is a town located about 9 miles away from where we currently are. So it's our neighbors.
And that's in Minnesota, not Princeton, New Jersey.
Yeah, that's in Minnesota.
But I'm sure people know that because we definitely don't have Jersey accents.
Definitely not. Definitely not, no. All right, so the man with many names is Casey Ramirez, also known by Dr. Ramirez, or Casey Jackson, or Mike Chambers, Dr. Diego, John Key, George King, and Dr. Casey.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a man of many names.
Wasn't Casey, would you say Casey Jackson?
Yep.
Wasn't that like one of the He-Man characters?
I have no idea.
You don't remember that? Might have to Google it. Go ahead.
So he came to Princeton, Minnesota in 1975, just looking for a place where people were friendly. His real name is Joseph Diego Ramirez, born July 2nd, 1947. Casey was a pilot. He loved planes and airports. So when the Princeton airport was in the midst of a financial collapse, he stepped in to help. Casey had bought the Princeton airport for $92,000, which was more than the city thought it was worth. In return, the city made Casey Ramirez an airport commissioner. Casey invested over $500,000 into renovating the airport. He built additional taxiways and a runway extension so jets could land there. Casey flew in palm trees from Florida to decorate City Hall.
I'm sorry, palm trees in Minnesota?
Trees. Yep, palm trees in Minnesota.
Well, that's like just throwing your Monday out the window as you're driving down the road.
You would think, though I did do some research on palm trees, and there are palm trees that can handle cold climates.
Really?
However, they can only withstand temperatures. The hardiest ones that I found can only withstand them from 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically here in Minnesota, it gets colder than that.
Yeah.
So Casey flies in these palm trees. That's too good. I guess Casey isn't too familiar with Minnesota winters yet. The most resilient of palm trees can only handle temperatures down to 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit for short durations. So not January in Minnesota when the temps drop down to negative 20 to negative 30 below 0 degrees for weeks at a time.
With the negative 60 wind chill and...
Exactly, yeah.
So did he leave them planted or did he move them in the wintertime or did he just keep flying in more palm trees?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I think they were meant to stay where they were.
Oh boy.
You know, I don't know if maybe they thought about maybe protecting them in the wintertime. because hopefully they would have did their research and known that they wouldn't survive.
Yikes.
But anyways, so basically Casey wanted to make Princeton, Minnesota, the Miami of the North. Yeah, they had a big billboard and everything.
Wow, Little
Yeah.
Princeton.
So as you were going down Highway 169, right off the off-ramp of Rum River Drive, they had a big billboard up there with palm trees and the sun setting. And
That is hilarious. And I mean, Princeton is a cute little town, but it is just that. It is a little town.
a little town.
I mean, I don't know what the current population of it is, but I know when I was in school, I think it was about the same size as Morris, so it was probably around 2,000 or something. It's probably way more than that now, but
Well, I'm sure it's not that much more than what it was back in this day. So currently their population is like 3,100.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Casey also gifted Princeton $500,000 to build an ice arena, which was the best hockey arena in the state and remains one of the best today, 40 years later.
Wow. Well, that's kind of funny because I did look up. Remember, I said I thought Casey Jackson was the character on He-Man?
Mm-hmm.
It's Casey Jones, and he wears a goalie mask, and he yields a hockey stick as his weapon.
Isn't that a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle thing?
Oh, it might be. I thought he. Oh, I bet you
I
he
think
was
it
on.
is.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking He-Man, but yeah, I think you're right. I think he was on Ninja
Okay.
Turtles.
Now I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
So Casey also stepped in to help the Princeton police. Help when the Princeton police budget wasn't enough to purchase new police cars. So Casey bought a couple of VW Rabbits.
Aren't those like itty bitty teeny
They are
weeny
tiny
little?
little cars, yes, which he leased for the city for $1 a year. The police lights on this cop car were so huge that it consumed the whole cop car. And I do have a picture that I'll put in the blog if anybody wants to check out this VW Rabbit with giant lights on it.
Where did they put the people they apprehended?
I'm getting into
Oh,
it. That's
sorry.
my next line.
Put a pin in it.
So, yeah, crazy looking police car. And then, yeah, when they arrest somebody, do they just toss them in the back of the hatchback? Because it is a hatchback, people. Okay. Acquiring minds want to know.
I want to know.
I want to know. He eventually bought 2 more police cars for the police department. He also bought the police department 2 Apple computers. He claimed the computers were worth $200,000, and he was giving them away free of charge.
$200,000.
$200,000.
What year was this?
81, 82 or
They
something.
were never that expensive, were they?
No. And they breached that subject later on in the
Okay.
story here. He also purchased a $5,000 printer, all free of charge.
Oh, he's such a nice
He's a
man.
generous guy. He is a generous
He's a
man.
pillar of the community.
He also paid for a massive fly-in of planes for the Rum River Festival. In a WCCO interview with Don Shelby. Yeah, Don.
That's a blast from the past.
That is a
name.
blast from the past. Casey Ramirez said he spent $2.5 million on his adopted city of Princeton, Minnesota. To residents of Princeton, he was known as the Santa Claus of Princeton. Everyone seemed to really like him. He was always generous and kind. Even to this day, there are those that hold him in high regard. Nobody seems very interested in where the money came from and how he earned his millions. They just accepted his help without asking any questions.
They were just happy that he was just giving everything for, well, I can't say for nothing, $1 a year for the little teeny weeny little rabbit.
Yeah.
Cars.
And there's a lot more to this story. But essentially what happened is right around this time is when they put in the bypass on 169 there.
Okay.
So, and at that point, the town was severely worried that the bypass was going to detour traffic into town and that the town was going to suffer.
It was going to detour traffic from going into town.
Right, and spending money and whatnot. So Casey's charitable actions started to draw attention. He tried to stay under the radar, but he eventually granted an interview with a couple of WCCO reporters. Casey told the reporters that nobody cared who he was or what he did when he came to Princeton. They didn't ask any questions. It was all about his integrity. That's what they cared about. He liked that Princeton didn't have all the problems that many other communities or countries have. He stated that he felt fortunate to be a part of the community. After the interview, WCCO received a call from somebody claiming that Casey Ramirez was not who he claimed to be, and that WCCO should check it out. Don Shelby never stated who that mystery caller was, assuming he was protecting his source, since he didn't say that the caller was anonymous. Sure would be interesting to know who made that call. Maybe Don Shelby is a listener of our podcast and can enlighten us about the caller's identity. And I did reach out to Don Shelby on Twitter.
You did?
Uh-huh. I sent him a message. I said, "Hi, Mr. Don Shelby. I have a few questions about Casey Ramirez. I'm doing a story on."
Did he respond?
He did not respond.
Damn it. I got all excited.
I did too.
Like, oh my God, we're going to interview Don Shelby.
I just thought he was going to answer me back. I don't know why, but
He may.
naive, I guess. You know.
And if he does, we'll definitely do an interview session
hell
with
yeah.
him.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that would be so cool. That
Yep.
is such a blast from the past.
Yeah, that would be. I tried to find that message I sent, but I don't know how to look
Oh, at your
at
previous.
the messages you sent. So after the caller, WCCO News started an investigation into Casey Ramirez. It didn't take them long to dig up some dirt. Don Shelby is like a dog with a bone. They don't do investigative journalism like this anymore. Don't mess with the Don.
Don't mess with him.
Don't mess with the Don. He get you. He get you good. So, a WCCO crew was invited to join Casey Ramirez in Acapulco. Casey registers his hotel room under Ramirez. However, as the crew is following him around, Casey stops to arrange for a horseback ride. He tells the person that his name is Diego. The reporter is thinking to himself, who the WTF is Diego? Oops, did I do that? Yes, you did, Casey. Yes, you did. So, Casey was asked how he acquired his wealth. And the first thing that he said was from a patent for an aviation safety device that he had filed. He stated 10 years ago that he went to bed with 75 cents in his pocket and his car was about to be repossessed, and he woke up a multimillionaire. He said he got a call from a stockbroker wanting to buy something he didn't even know he owned.
Suspicious?
A little suspicious, yeah. I mean, it's plausible, but, suspicious.
I mean, you'd have to own a lot of different stocks to not remember a stock that you own.
Well, I think it's the patent that he owned that he's talking about.
Gotcha.
I think, I don't know. But then he is said to have owned a couple of aviation companies, one in Boca Raton, Florida, called Boca Aviation, and one in Phoenix called Air Centurion. He also said that he was a director of Republic Airlines. It was noted that he owned a large portion of Apple computers. Then he said he inherited his wealth from his parents. Guess what? None of that's true.
I was going to say.
Shocker.
That is a shocker.
So Casey has also told people he was a whiskey salesman. And this is the best one. Gynecologist.
What a
calling
calling?
Dr. Ramirez.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Ramirez, do you have time for a pap, please? Or is it Paps? I don't know. Paps Blue Ribbon. Professional tennis player.
What?
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. And then a CIA agent.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be that secret agent.
I mean, if he would have been
secret.
smart, he probably would have just led with that one, because
Then he wouldn't have had to say anything else.
yeah, I can't say anything else or I'll have to kill you. Yeah, exactly. They did searches for any U.S. patents or trademarks and found nothing. The only one that they found true was Continental Republic Airlines, which he ran out of his mother's home in Boca Raton, Florida.
He ran an airline out of someone's home?
His mother's home.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
And started the company in 1977. The state of Florida dissolved the company a year later. They traced Ramirez's history from Danbury, Connecticut, where he learned to fly. He was enlisted in the Navy, then on to Miami, San Diego, and Phoenix. They did discover he owned a dozen airplanes and about 50 cars.
Jeez.
Yeah, he was connected there.
Definitely.
He also has homes in Hialeah, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Los Angeles, and Princeton, Minnesota.
Wow.
Good old Princeton. I mean, that's the nicest one of them all. It's the Miami of the North.
Right.
So, Don Shelby stated, Casey Ramirez is a businessman with no businesses to be found. Casey pays all his bills in cash. Sus, a little sus.
A little sus.
Yeah.
How you have so much cash, Mr. Sir?
Yeah, he liked his cash. I don't know. I mean, I guess I do too, but the contractor working on the ice arena demanded payment for the work done. Casey paid him $128,000 in crisp $20 bills.
$20 bills?
$20 bills.
That is a lot of bills.
That's a lot of bills. Inside of what?
A brown paper
A
bag.
brown paper bag.
Wow.
I guess it was bags, plural, but all I ever got in a brown paper bag was lunch. And by the time I got to eat it, it was usually smushed from sitting on it on the school bus. I feel kind of ripped, jilted.
Feel a little jaded, do ya?
Jaded, yes.
Jaded Designs.
Yeah. I'm going to tell my mom I want my money back.
Well, there was something to be said about a smushed peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and honey sandwich.
No, not really.
I kind of liked the smushness of it.
Well, you like peanut butter on buns, too, so we had this conversation.
I just did that the other day. I was finishing up some hot dog buns because we didn't have any more hot dogs, so I put them in the toaster and made toast out of it. He looks at me like I am absolutely crazy. I'm like, it's better than throwing them away, and they're good.
I disagree. All right.
Moving on.
Casey had ties with all the community leaders, officials of the Bank of Princeton, and even the mayor. The bank manager was interviewed. He was asked if he was concerned about where the money was coming from. He said, I hope it wasn't from anything illegal, but it's money. It spends the same either way.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually banks don't question when you make a deposit.
Well, they do. I mean, deposits over a certain amount.
That's true. They have to report them.
Yep, they have to report it to the IRS.
Right.
Yep. So he was then asked if he knew anything about Casey Ramirez's business dealings. His answer was epic. I would assume if he wanted me to know, he would have told me. There is a big old grin on the bank manager's face as he's asked this question, like, yeah, so what you gonna do about it? He didn't want to ask any questions. He wants that money coming in. But everyone that they interviewed in town has the same demeanor when asked about Casey. Big old grin followed by guessing if he wanted me to know, he would have told me.
Right.
It kind of makes me want to move to Princeton, too. So he had been living in Princeton for 5 years, but it wasn't until 1980 that he started to get in tight with all the city officials. So my question is, what was he doing for those 5 years, and why in 1980 did he decide he wanted to become Princeton's Santa Claus?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I want to know. I want to know.
Right. I mean, why did he
Because, yeah, apparently he moved there in 1975. And then he was basically quiet up until 1980.
Right.
Yeah, weird.
Maybe he was just trying to get his feelers out, find out who he could collab with and who he couldn't. And
It kind of seems like it all started with that Princeton airport.
Yeah.
When that came up for sale, it was like...
he snatched that one right up.
He had a mission in play there. So rumors were going on in town about Casey. He responded to the rumors in a local paper saying, "Let me clarify some rumors. I am not into white slavery. I'm not in the mafia. I do not transport drugs." Kind of specific. I do not transport drugs.
Which you kind of do.
Kind of, maybe, might. I don't know.
Yeah.
We still don't know what Casey's profession is.
Oh, put a pin in it.
Put a pin in it. So Don Shelby says Casey has never been convicted of a crime. He has been arrested twice. The most serious was involving a plane. But what about the other 30 aliases he has? Did anybody look into those?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Kind of like Donald Blum.
Yeah, Donald Blum had a couple of them, right?
He had a few of them, yeah.
Yeah, this guy is like 30. So. Ramirez bought a plane in the Bahamas, and a court in the Bahamas ruled that the sale was illegal. He ended up losing the plane and his $28,000 investment into the plane. And eventually, the plane was sold to an aircraft dealer in California. So Casey decided to get it back. He went to take a look at a different plane this guy was selling and told the aircraft dealer that he was looking for something a little bit bigger. He noticed that Queen Air then asked if it was for sale. The aircraft dealer said it was, so Casey asked if he could take a test flight in the Queen Air. He agreed to purchase the plane and would be back the next day to finalize everything.
Did he just take off with it and never come back?
Dun, dun, dun. But that evening, Casey returned after the dealer was closed, fueled up the plane, and took off. He stole it right off the runway.
Is doing a test flight, is that a common thing?
I suppose it's probably like, test driving a car.
Yeah, but they could just disappear. I mean, I suppose you could with a car too, but
Yeah, you could.
with a plane, you can get to Florida from here in 3 hours.
So he had a friend fly it to Florida, where they
Speaking of,
where they left it while they tried to get ownership back from the courts in the Bahamas. Unfortunately, they could never get the courts to legalize the sale. So police found the plane months later, abandoned in Fort Lauderdale.
he just left it.
They just left it because they couldn't work it out in the court system. So FBI charged Casey with stealing the plane from San Diego. They put a warrant out for his arrest, but he remained a fugitive for 8 months. Even city officials in Princeton knew about the warrant, but didn't let that affect their business relationship.
Well, of course not, because he's leasing them cars and computers,
And he is loaded.
yeah, he's showing up with brown paper bags full of cashola.
Yeah. I'm starting to think Princeton was owned by the mafia.
No, they were owned by Casey Ramirez.
They were some lax mofos. As long as you bring the green, they won't ask any questions. He was finally arrested at the Dearborn Airport in Phoenix, Arizona. He hired criminal defense attorney Ron Mashabasher.
Seriously? Another blast from the past.
Another blast from the past.
Didn't we do another case that had Meshbusher too?
Condon, the murders.
Oh, the Glensheen?
Glensheen. Yeah, I think he was on that or something too, the murder case.
Okay. So it was Meshbusher. What a blast from the past again, too.
Yeah.
That was on like every other commercial on TV growing up.
Yeah, and I can't remember how it goes now, but like, yeah, you think about it and you think, oh, wow.
Oh, I should see if I can find a commercial.
Which,
wasn't it Meshbusher and Spence or something like that?
Something like that. And unfortunately, I tried to reach out to him too, but then I found out that he passed away. So
Oh, no.
yeah,
Rest in peace.
rip. He also brought Richard Anderson, the mayor of Princeton, to be used as a character witness for Casey Ramirez. He just brought out all the big guns. The government ended up dismissing the case because Ramirez had an airtight alibi at the time of the crime. However, the U.S. Attorney's Office said they dropped the case temporarily because they were not ready to charge Mr. Ramirez with the crime. So the government was still conducting an investigation into the plane theft. This is not the first time that Casey has dealt with the FBI. Back in 1972, he was posing as a university student, saying that he was a Nixon supporter. When they stopped him, he was using government identification and showing it around campus. According to Don Shelby of WCCO News, the FBI had no comment about the case, so I'm assuming he was never charged with anything in this case, which is weird because, you know, a government identity theft,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's a felony.
Oh, definitely.
Reporters contacted Casey again, asking for an interview. He told them that he could not be interviewed due to national security.
Due to national security. That's right.
security.
He did say he was in the CIA.
Yeah, he said he was a spy. So is he a secret agent or the king of bullshit?
Secret
agent man.
You're not a secret agent man.
Personally, I'm going with the latter, but at this point, Casey has the U.S. Customs Office looking into his actions. They want to know how he could fly back and forth from Latin America multiple times during the 8 months that he had a warrant out for his arrest, undetected. They have already been looking into him for drug and currency smuggling. In 1978, federal and state agents were looking into a convicted drug dealer named William Zambito. He made a deal to turn on 10 of his smuggling associates. Before he could testify more, he was murdered in prison. Casey was once connected with William Zambito. Casey used to be a pilot for him. When Casey was living in Florida, he was associated with Anthony J. Randazzo. They partnered up together to do flight runs. Federal drug investigators gave Randazzo a deal to testify against fellow drug smugglers. In turn for his testimony, he wouldn't be charged. He told WCCO I-Team that he knows Ramirez well. Oh boy. Don, you said that as if you were saying it directly to Ramirez's face through the TV.
He was good like that.
Yeah, I could feel those words.
Ooh. And I did find that commercial. I didn't play it, obviously, because, you know, we're in the middle of recording, but I sent it to you a link. I don't know if you want to play it and see if it brings back any memories or not.
Well, we'll play it after. We don't want to bore people.
Okay.
So, Gail Vale, former chief pilot for Ramirez, says she flew or witnessed large amounts of cash being passed between Florida and Minnesota. that she assisted in transporting. When asked if she knew if Ramirez was transporting drugs, she told the investigators that Ramirez said to her that she might be stopped, she might be frisked,
Ooh.
but don't worry. Do not worry.
Do not fret.
She also said that on one flight, Ramirez said he doesn't transport drugs, but one of his clients might.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's how you get around that kind of thing. Once Ramirez purchased the land at the Princeton airport, he also handled all the fuel concessions for the city, agreeing to pay the city for the lost income. So basically, I'm assuming that means he was giving the fuel away for free, I'm sure to eliminate a paper trail of his fuel consumption. It's an intelligent plan, especially in a town that doesn't ask any questions. Casey did pay the city for the losses in income and fuel. However, he had a receipt made out to Mike Chambers as the payee, one of Ramirez's other aliases.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was paying in cash. Withers, who is an assistant for the city, was asked why he thought somebody would use a different name. Withers said, "The only reason I can think of is to avoid the IRS." He was trying to hide that he spent that kind of money. Richard L. Anderson, the mayor of Princeton at the time, was the one who sold the airport land to Casey, despite being told not to trust Casey by the city official Greg Withers. He knew at the time that other agencies were investigating Ramirez, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the IRS, and the FBI. But despite that, because the city needed the money, they sold Ramirez the property anyways.
So they just looked the other way.
Oh yeah, they looked the other way on everything. Everything. So Greg Withers also told the investigators that they never accepted the computers because Ramirez wanted to keep ownership of the computers and its software. So if that computer went in, Casey would have access to all the city's business. Sounds like a master plan to me, but he came across the one nut he couldn't crack. Mr. Greg Withers. Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you're Greg Withers. Mayor Richard Anderson owned the house that Ramirez was living in. Ramirez and Anderson lived in the house together for a while. He was tired of living with Ramirez as a guest, so he moved out of his own house. Ramirez lived there for 6 years, and once Richard moved out, Casey bought the house. Rumors around town say that they heard Casey offer the mayor $100,000 more than the home's market value.
That sounds like a good bribe.
Yeah, I'm sure the mayor loved that. He's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll leave. I don't have a problem with that. But then to top it off, the mayor from there rented an apartment above the Sears store. Casey pays the mayor's rent for the apartment.
What?
Yeah. So not only does he get $100,000 extra,
He gets free rent.
he gets free rent.
Well, that's one hell of a deal.
Yeah. I'll move too. I'll live above Sears. What the hell? They got some nice toolboxes.
So
Or
was
did.
that the octagonal house or whatever?
No, that's that brown apartment complex as you're coming down Rum River.
Oh, no, I meant the house that he bought. Was that elusive house on the Rum River?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not sure where it is. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it.
I remember people talking about that house, and I figured that was the house you were talking about.
That is the one. I think it's the only one that he lived in. So.
Okay.
Richard Nellis, airport commissioner, was also an insurance salesman and a supporter of Ramirez and what he was doing for the airport. Nellis insured a number of the 50 cars Casey owned. He refused to talk to investigators about Ramirez. Jerry Davis, a former manager of the local credit union, was under federal investigation with ties to Ramirez in question of large cash deposits being brought into the credit union. Bank officials claim that Davis failed to file tax documents for these large deposits of money, totaling more than $1 million.
Whoa.
Yeah, which today would be over $3 million.
Ouch.
Casey's $750,000 net worth would be worth almost $2.5 billion today.
Damn.
Wowza!
That's a lot of zeros.
That's a lot of Benjamins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ramirez, if you're out there and in need of a friend to help you spend that money, I'll be your huckleberry. Call me.
You got a friend.
You got
in me.
a friend in me. I'll spend your money. So, Jerry Davis wanted a hockey rink arena so bad for the little kids of Princeton that he went into cahoots with Ramirez.
Got into
bed with him. Ramirez agreed to help him and deposited the money needed to start the hockey arena. So Jerry Davis wanted a hockey arena so bad, he went to Casey Ramirez for the money. So Davis used the money Casey deposited into the credit union to pay for it. He never got the approval of the board of directors of the credit union to use the money. So when the contractor came to get paid, the board denied it. So the contractor sued the credit union and Casey Ramirez. Eventually, Ramirez flew in via a helicopter and paid the contractor in cash, which made the lawsuit go away. After that, Jerry Davis was forced to give his resignation from the credit union and started working for Ramirez managing the ice arena.
Convenient.
Yeah. You'd think that'd be a drop in pay, but
I doubt it. He's working right for Ramirez now.
he's working for Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So at this point, Casey is now under investigation by the Minnesota Commerce Commission, the Internal Revenue Service, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the United States Customs Service, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, and 3 local police agencies in Florida.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of these agencies said that Casey Ramirez was suspected of cocaine smuggling. The DOJ said that Casey's smuggling operation was one of the most complex that they had ever seen. So they're getting close now. They're getting close.
I don't think that it was all that complex. It was just there was a lot of people turning a blind eye to this guy.
Well, his actual operation was quite complex.
Gotcha.
Because if you think about the airport and all that he did, and you take away all the supposed goodness that he's done, and then you start linking those facts together,
Right.
he made Princeton his bitch.
Yes, he did.
He had a plan. He was a man with a plan, and this was a staging area for him.
That is true.
Yeah. So U.S. Customs agents found 397 pounds of cocaine aboard a Cessna airplane abandoned on Grand Bahama Islands in
Jeez.
1983. The government said Ramirez and his associates ditched the plane to avoid customs aircraft.
So they ditched the plane and the drugs.
And the drugs, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now he's being charged federal charges of conspiracy to smuggle 397 pounds of cocaine into Florida and evading income taxes. So, court transcript of the event leading to the arrest of Casey Ramirez, a.k.a. Joseph Diego Ramirez. Defendants Ken Moakley, Joseph Casey Ramirez, and William Colby individually contest their convictions for 2 charges: conspiracy to import cocaine and conspiracy to possess cocaine, with the intent to distribute it, and indictment alleged that these conspiracies spanned from early 1981 to April of 1983 and had operations in Minnesota and Florida and other locations.
You mean northern Miami?
Yeah, northern Miami. The Miami of the North.
There you go.
Can't even say northern Miami.
That's true.
Additionally, Moakley was found guilty of 2 counts of perjury during a grand jury trial. Investigations into the defendant's smuggling activities. After their convictions by a jury, the following penalties were imposed. Moakley was sentenced to serve 7 years in prison and fined $10,000. Combly received a combined penalty of 10 years of imprisonment and a $10,000 fine. Ramirez received a cumulative sentence of 20 years imprisonment and a $50,000 fine. This legal case originated when defendant Ramirez's small aircraft was found abandoned in the Bahamas, containing 12 duffel bags filled with cocaine. This incident occurred after a pursuit by the United States Customs planes. Ramirez was engaged in operating a fixed base operation, simulated at the Princeton, Minnesota airport. This business offered services such as storage and maintenance for private airplanes and flight lessons. On April 20th, 1983, Ramirez called from Florida to Gregory Schmidt in Minnesota, requesting him to fly one of Ramirez's planes, a Cessna 210, number 6544 Yankee, from Princeton to Florida. Schmidt was the prosecution's chief witness. He testified under the promise of immunity from prosecution for smuggling charges. The next day, Schmidt flew the plane to Fort Lauderdale and was met at the airport by Ramirez and Moakley. The three went to the townhouse owned by Ramirez and later returned to the airport. They installed 4 or 5 extra 15-gallon fuel tanks into another of Ramirez's planes, a Cessna 210 number 6608 Charlie, and had it fueled. Ramirez gave a $100 tip to the person who fueled the plane. The 3 men then returned to Ramirez's townhouse. Schmidt testified that Combly came by the townhouse sometime that evening. Ramirez decided it would be Combly and not Schmidt who would fly the 6608 Charlie on a smuggling mission to South America.
I keep waiting for you to say 666.
Close. Not quite, though. To be paid $50,000. Later that night, Schmidt and Moakley prepared a large lunch for Combly's flight. The following morning, Friday, April 22nd, 1983, Ramirez, Schmidt, and Moakley loaded the lunch, a life raft, and other gear onto 6608 Charlie and connected auxiliary fuel pumps. The co-pilot's seat had been taken out of the plane. Combly checked out of his hotel at 6:20 a.m., met the others at the airport, and took off with a single male passenger. That afternoon, Ramirez's girlfriend, Pamela Jackson, returned to vacation with him. On Saturday afternoon, Ramirez asked Schmidt and Moakley to fly his plane in a cover operation to determine whether Combly was being pursued by customs aircraft upon his return. Ramirez was to pass another of his planes. They operated on a particular radio frequency and were to use prearranged codes. Moakley was to fly touch and go at the Opelika West Airport, a remote and unoccupied airport where, according to Schmidt, Ramirez and Moakley had landed on previous occasion. And Moakley had criticized Ramirez for using his name on the radio frequency.
Well, yeah, if you're transporting drugs.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't use my name, man.
But I guess he's so used to people looking the other way with everything that he does. I suppose it doesn't even faze him. I am invincible.
No, not today. So Schmidt heard Ramirez and Combly converse, and Ramirez gave a signal to indicate trouble. Ramirez gave instructions to evade 2 customs planes that were in pursuit. Schmidt and Moakley landed their planes in Boca Raton Airport after Ramirez and Combly had decided to abandon Florida airspace. Moakley told Schmidt and Comble, and Ramirez probably flew to the Bahamas and would stay away from Ramirez's townhouse. Pamela Jackson later relayed a message to Schmidt to fly to the Bahamas.
And I'm assuming the Bahamas doesn't have extradition.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I
didn't look that up.
I think I remember hearing that from before, but that's the only reason I can think of that they would say that. Or maybe it was because it was close, too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. A customs pilot testified he observed evasive maneuvering by the 6608 Charlie.
666.
Yeah. 66608 Charlie. Oh boy, the devil's plane. And that it finally headed towards the Grand Bahamas. While continuing its evasive maneuvers, it approached a field, passed over Freeport Airport, and landed on the dirt road between 5 and 5:15 p.m. The pilot observed green duffel bags in the plane. According to customs documents, Ramirez landed at the Freeport Airport at 5:20 p.m. At 5296 Yankee, at 7 p.m., Bahamas police located 6608 Charlie and removed 5 blue plastic gas cans and 12 duffel bags of cocaine.
Jeez.
Schmidt landed at Freeport Airport around 10:30 p.m. and was met by Ramirez, who informed him that Comble had landed on the island. After a search, they found Comble and brought him to a hotel. Ramirez criticized Comble for not burning the plane. Comble was very angry over the loss of the 400-pound cargo of cocaine.
But
if you would have burned it, you wouldn't have got caught. Right?
Yeah.
16 international aeronautical maps were recovered in a secondary search of 6608 Charlie. 8 bore 44 fingerprint impressions and 7 palm print impressions of Comble, concentrated along the path of South America. One had multiplication figures reflecting the pounds of cocaine loaded on the plane. 4 of Ramirez's fingerprint impressions were identified on one of the maps. The canvas bags were found to have 181 fiberglass encased packages, each containing a kilogram of cocaine, a total of 398 pounds.
Fiberglass?
Yeah, I guess so.
Huh.
Did you notice that the pounds went up by 1?
I didn't.
Because they said 397 before. Now they say
398. Good catch.
On Sunday, April 24th, 1983, Ramirez instructed Schmidt and Comble to ditch a seat from 6608 Charlie in the ocean. Upon their return that day to the United States in 5296 Yankee, Schmidt filled a customs report listing himself as pilot and Comble as the passenger. They returned to Ramirez's house where Moakley and Jackson were waiting. Ramirez flew back separately and went to the townhouse. Arguing with Comble about the refusal to pay Comble for the mission, Schmidt and Moakley then flew to Minnesota in 6544 Yankee. Schmidt had flown from Minnesota to Florida to assist Ramirez in preparing 6608 Charlie for similar flights and had passed over on other occasions in 1992. Schmidt had been acquitted of perjury in a trial in May 1994. He offered to testify in return for immunity from smuggling charges. The district court held a hearing to evaluate inconsistencies between statements he made and previous testimony he had given, and to determine whether he had received immunity from the perjury charges for his trial testimony. Schmidt previously denied knowing how Comble got to the Bahamas and having searched for him with Ramirez. Schmidt admitted being threatened with prosecution if he refused to testify against Ramirez. He admitted to smuggling activity and cover operations that he had denied previously at trial. Schmidt had described previous operations with Ramirez using standard plans or schemes, including cover flights, radio frequencies, codes, auxiliary fuel containers, use of the same plane, 6608 Charlie, and operation smuggling guns or drugs from South America. He testified that Moakley also had flown cover for Ramirez on other occasions. Apart from Schmidt's testimony, the government introduced evidence of Ramirez's past activity. Over objection by Comble, counsel Stephen Lett testified that Ramirez made 4 trips to the Bahamas with him, 2 of which involved attempts to purchase marijuana. Jack DeVoe testified under a plea agreement condition the government's sentencing recommendation on the quality and quantity of his trial testimony. He pleaded guilty to federal smuggling charges and faced 30 to 90 years of imprisonment.
That's a pretty wide range.
Yeah, 90 years. Oh my. The sentence recommendation would affect this sentence: parole eligibility and further immunity. DeVoe testified he was aware that how he testified would affect his sentence. His testimony was allowed by the court despite objections that he had an incentive to perjure himself. DeVoe testified that he had made smuggling trips with Ramirez between 1980 and 1981 and helped Ramirez set up his operation. He testified Ramirez admitted smuggling cocaine in Cessna 210 airplanes such as 6608 Charlie. DeVoe had given testimony previously in other trials. The district court ordered the government to supply a prior testimony to the defense, and it provided DeVoe's testimony from a federal trial in West Palm Beach and before a grand jury in Minneapolis. The government could not supply his testimony before a Bahamian commission.
Bohemian? Maybe?
Bohemian? Bahamian. Bahamian Commission, a grand jury in Miami, or testimony in a federal trial in Miami. Martin Osheroff, a Hialeah dry cleaner, testified over the objection that Ramirez brought a green duffel bag to his establishment early in 1981. He stated that the bag was full of over $1 million in cash that Ramirez transferred to some suitcases. Ashura produced the bag, which was found to contain traces of cocaine. The bag was similar to those used to transport cocaine. Over objection, Donald Perbix testified to Ramirez's large cash deposits at the Community State Bank in Princeton. Again, over objection, Joyce Edmonds from the Princeton Credit Union testified to large cash transactions by Ramirez. Ramirez brought more than $850,000 in cash to the credit union. The credit union would use the money for daily operations and negotiations of checks, which it would deposit to Ramirez's account. On occasion, Moakley accompanied Ramirez when he brought in cash and would bring in money himself for deposit to Ramirez's account.
I bet you the credit union's pretty bored now that Ramirez isn't there. They're not having to count all that cash and not having to deal with the... I'm sure they still deal with some big transactions, but...
I'm sure they were getting something off the top, too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Especially not filing those any paperwork.
Right.
So Comble also attended Ramirez to the credit union on one occasion. Neither the bank nor the credit union filled cash transaction reports. Ramirez once deposited $100,000 in cash to the credit union for DeVoe in the early 1980s. Moakley delivered about $20,000 to DeVoe in Florida. The remainder was paid in 3 airplanes, one provided by Comble. William Morris testified over objections that he discussed smuggling operations with Ramirez in the fall of 1981. Ramirez told him Moakley was his co-pilot on some of his trips and that it was okay for him to speak freely about anything in front of him. Moakley was not present at a later conversation between Ramirez and Morris in February of 1982, when Ramirez proposed that Morris fly decoy or cover operations for him. Morris also testified that he delivered auxiliary fuel containers to Ramirez and Moakley for a mission Ramirez eventually called off. Witness Gail Vale testified she ferried Ramirez's planes from Princeton to Florida between November of 1981 and January of 1982. The aircraft included 6608 Charlie. On one occasion, she was met by Ramirez and Moakley. Dennis Wolak testified that he ferried planes for Ramirez, including Cessna 210s, between Princeton and Florida in 1982. During the grand jury investigation of Ramirez's activities beginning in April 1982, Moakley, an attorney, asserted his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in response to questioning about Ramirez's ownership. The assistant U.S. attorney asked Moakley whether he had contacted particular attorneys, well-known criminal defense lawyers, concerning the investigation. Moakley denied keeping a pilot log after 1978, and he claimed he did not recall being in Florida during 1983. However, another grand jury testified that Moakley had been in Florida, stayed with Ramirez, and studied Spanish there. His flight instructor, Gail Vale, testified that she recorded a flight instruction in Moakley's logbook and that he kept his recorded records in pencil. Moakley was convicted of perjury based on the denial of being in Florida or maintaining a logbook.
So did he not maintain the logbook because of the trips that they were taking, or was it something that Ramirez didn't request or require? Or?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they didn't want to keep any traces of what they were doing.
But as for him not remembering, I mean, shit, if you asked me what I had for dinner last night, I wouldn't be able to tell you. So, I mean, is he truly perjuring or is he just human?
I think he was perjuring. He was acquitted of perjury for his statement that he had never owned an aircraft. The district court denied the defendant's motion to sever Moakley's perjury charges from other charges. It is clear, however, that the evidence of the acts committed in Minnesota, including storage and shuttling of planes, was uncontroverted and substantial. The aircraft that flew the cover operations and the smuggling missions, proven to the jury, were stored and shuttled from Princeton to Florida. Ramirez was sentenced to 20 years in prison and a $50,000 fine.
$50,000, that's it?
That's it.
Did he show up with a brown paper bag to pay it?
I bet he did. Right after he got out of prison. See, if we could find that house in Princeton, I mean, there's probably bags buried all over the place.
I bet.
Go dig up some gold, man.
I'm sure if we went kayaking down the river, we'd probably see it.
Yeah, probably. So, well, that's my story. So I got all my information from law.justia.com and also from YouTube videos of the WCCO news team investigations.
Did that just bring back flashbacks watching those?
Oh, yeah, that did. It was crazy. It was like, yeah, being a kid again. Seeing
Memories.
those on TV.
Those newscasters that haven't been around for...
Yeah, some are, a couple are long gone.
Yeah. I know when you were playing it, it was just like...
Yeah, just the sound of it.
The voices and...
Yeah. Well, that's all I got for you guys.
Well, that was great. What a I mean, and then being the town right next door to us, and it wasn't really that long ago.
Well, I mean,
to
what,
me, it doesn't feel like that
yeah,
long ago.
but it's about 40 years ago. So, but yeah. So I was just gonna say something else, and now I forgot.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I did do a little research further, and I don't know if I actually found Mr. Ramirez, but
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this.
yeah, I might have found him living in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Of all places.
Yeah, so he might still be in this state.
That would be crazy. Yeah, you were telling me what, the criteria matched for the age, and previous address was Princeton.
Yeah, because I don't know how many years he served, but I do know that he got out for good behavior at some point. So, I mean, he didn't do his whole sentence. And currently he would be 72 years old.
Right.
So,
didn't it say that for the age as well? Didn't it match up?
Yeah, the ages match up. All the, his convictions are listed on there. So, I mean, I think it's him.
Ooh.
So it might be interesting to kind of see if we can maybe track him down and see
if he'd do an interview.
He'd do an interview or something.
I think I'd be a little intimidated.
I don't think. I think he's kind of a pussycat.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, he was Santa Claus of Princeton.
Yeah.
How bad could he be?
And I do remember somebody telling me a story. I didn't know about him when we first moved out here, and I didn't know about him when I lived in Mora, which is, it's 45 minutes from our house to Mora, so from Princeton about 30 minutes. I didn't remember hearing the stories of him when I lived in Mora either, but somebody was telling me that, I don't remember if he owned a gas station or he was doing like promos with the gas station or something, but with every fill up, like if you filled your tank, he would give like a bottle of liquor or something.
Whiskey or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. There was something with the Princeton airport when he took over the fuel commission there.
Okay.
So there was something with, if the planes would come in and fill up, he would give them a free bottle of whiskey.
Maybe that's what it was.
Which I didn't actually add in the story. But yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, it would be kind of cool to see if we could maybe track him down, do an interview with him.
That would be cool.
Whether or not he'd do it or not, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's already been convicted, so he can't do double jeopardy. So
yeah, I mean,
he
nothing,
could do
nothing to really hide at this point.
Do a tell-all. Well, so we came up with a new fun little thing that we're going to start trying to implement with the episodes. We'll see how it goes, if people like it. But we would like to do a segment called the Conundrum Challenge.
Ooh.
And what we're going to do is we're going to find a fun little riddle, and we'll read it off, and then we'll put the riddle out on social media, and to the first listener who gets the riddle correct will get a shout out on the show.
Nice.
So the first riddle that I have found, I got to find it here, is I'm not alive, but I can grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I?
Whoa, that is a conundrum.
It is.
Let us know, people.
We will have this on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. No cheating. We don't want people going out and Googling the answer. Give it a true, guess. And we'll shout out the person
We'll
who...
shout you out.
Yes. But other than that, do you have any news?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, until next time.
Love you.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Smell you later. Thanks for hanging out with us here at Total Conundrum. Please make sure to check out our website and blog at TotalConundrum.com for news, upcoming events, merch, bloopers, and additional hysteria. You never know what will pop up, so be sure to follow along. If you want to show your support for Total Conundrum and gain access to all of our bonus content, please visit our Patreon page. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The links are available in our show notes. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, or stories to share, please email us at contact@TotalConundrum.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate the love. Keep on creeping on, mother cluckers.